Hey, everybody. Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Dean, the robots are coming.
What?
I mean, they're already here.
Oh, God. You scared me.
I think we kind of established that.
Like, they're out outside the door? What's going on here? Yeah.
Do you have any robots in your home yet?
Well, no. I mean, I have a car that can be autonomous.
That's true.
I don't need to talk to Elon. He thinks that's part of the
close as
robotics
it gets
world.
There, yeah.
But no, I don't have a
I got
robot.
the robot.
Well, we had a Roomba for a little while.
Yeah, I've got that, and I've got the robot mop now, too.
Oh, do you?
I mean, that's not the kind of complex robots we're talking about today.
Well, I understand, yeah.
Still,
still a small step.
Yeah,
yes,
a little bit close to that.
Yeah.
If you could have your choice of some kind of a autonomous robot in your home, around your home, part of your life, what would you choose?
Well, I'll go back to the Jetsons. I thought by now I was supposed to have
Rosie.
Rosie.
Yeah.
Where's my Rosie the robot for crying out loud?
Point.
Baking meals and cleaning up the house.
Was it Rosie? I think that was her name.
I think it was her name. Yeah. So anyway, that would be mine.
Yeah, I think that would be my wife's preference too, especially the cleaning side of things.
What are you looking for? Like somebody to game against, or are you looking for somebody to cut the lawn? What?
The lawn thing. I think that
thing?
I keep hearing the stories about the robot, lawn mowers,
the lawn Roomba.
Yeah, and the ones that can trim everything up nicely.
Yeah.
As I get older, and every time, this weekend I went out there in 90-degree weather and mowed the lawn. I'm like, I could use that. My son's not old enough yet to do it himself,
right?
So
you're in that zone, right?
Yeah, I'm ready for the robot vacuum, to come stepping in there, or the robot lawnmower rather, to come stepping in there.
Very good. Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, so obviously, if you hadn't figured out, we're talking about robots today on the show.
All right, I like it.
They are making their way into the channel.
Yes.
You might be a little curious about where the opportunity lies, or if it's even really a fit for you and your company. I think there's a lot of VARs struggling with that right now.
For sure there are.
I get it. I know it's happening, but is that something I really want to incorporate into my business? Yep. So we got Milt Walker joining us from Intel today.
Nice.
He's going to help us, understand a little bit more about what's happening in the robotics world. Maybe if it is a fit for you and for our channel. Spoiler alert, we think it is. So we're gonna talk about Intel's view on robotics. They are thinking about it as a full speed ahead. Are they taking some small steps? We're going to talk about VARs and some of the industries a lot of our VARs work in, and where robots do fit in. What kind of applications are tailor made for robotics at this point?
Yep.
Some common concerns that maybe you or end users actually might have around these devices, and again, maybe combating some of the pushback. And then we'll get into some reasons why you probably do want to put these out in the market, what it can do for you, what it's going to mean for your business.
Well, there you go.
To invest in robotics as this starts growing.
Nice. I like it.
All that plus our usual value to the VAR. What's tech connecting with us? It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
As I mentioned, our guest today is Milt Walker. He is the Robotics Sales and Business Development Specialist for Intel.
Nice.
I mean, when robotics is in the title, that's a pretty good sign that you are the guy that we needed to have here on the podcast to have this conversation. So, Milt, thanks so much for joining us today. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, your background. How did you get into this robotic space, and what's your day-to-day like at Intel these days?
Absolutely, yeah. So thanks for bringing me on the show. I'm happy to be here, and I love talking about robots. And so, I think this will be a good discussion. So I got into robotics actually before I went to college. I was really interested in, becoming a roboticist or a robot designer, or someone who used robots on a day-to-day basis. And so it really pushed me to understand, what could I do in the robotic space, right? And when I actually started working, of course, it wasn't in robots. So for a long time, I was doing things other than robots, and it was in the computer industry. But it wasn't until my second sabbatical at Intel that I said, "Hey, I really want to go." Really deeply in the robotics, and I want to understand this space. And so that took me on a trip to Japan, where I ended up purchasing a small consumer robot to learn more about the technology, what went into building, what went into controlling robots, and sort of what was happening in that space. And so I bought a small humanoid robot. I brought it back. It was a kit, and I put that robot together. And in doing so, whenever you build something that you're unfamiliar with, you always learn a bunch of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I put that robot together, it didn't do what I wanted it to do, right? It couldn't walk around autonomously. It couldn't avoid, the pets. It couldn't do things that were based on vision. And so, I had a challenge that, I took that as a challenge for me to build something and learn more about this space. And so, it took me on this journey of learning about all the different protocols and the different sensors and things of that nature, how to do sensor fusion, how do you make your robot balance, right? And understand that, as it's moving around, it's got to sort of stay vertical. It was a humanoid robot.
Right.
Right.
Some of the simple stuff, right. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And so I learned a lot there. And then I got, as I started asking questions about how could I use Intel's technology to implement it in my, my robot project, I got pulled into these other discussions about technology that was happening around Intel, which was really interesting because I would have had no, entry point into those discussions hadn't I bought this robot. I just thought it was so, the path that this thing took me on was so interesting. So I've been on that path for, almost a little over a decade now.
Nice.
From that small beginning to my current role. I was at Intel. I left Intel. I went off and did some things, some startup things, built a nonprofit, came back to Intel, and I'm focused on, this business development sales specialist role at Intel. And so that's sort of what got me here.
That's awesome.
I like it. Did you ever do a first robotics competition way back when you were, brought that first humanoid over and started playing with it?
I didn't. My son, I did get my son into first Lego League.
Nice.
He was in first Lego League several times, and so
very nice.
He wasn't a robot guy like me, but he loved the software side of that.
Okay. Yep.
And so he really took to that. And
That's
was,
nice.
Several years ago.
Yeah, we had a chapter first at our large show we call VAR Tech. We had them come out on stage and demo some of the robotics that those kids
that was
built.
really stuff. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, they are just so awesome at what they do. And I was just having visions of that as you were talking about that because they love to tinker, right? These kids are tinkering and yet they're building stuff that is pretty badass, if I could use the phrase. So anyway,
I love the
yeah.
Exactly. I love this story though, because we get a lot of folks to give us that story of like, well, this was my passion, but that didn't work out, so I started working in this industry.
Right. Yeah.
And you were like, well, this was my passion. I kind of worked something different, but then I went off and explored my passion more and made it part of my work life.
That's awesome, dude.
That's an awesome story. And again, I think we've got the right person to have this conversation with because you clearly get it and understand the potential for robotics out there. So let's kick that off first of all with Intel's point of view here. Like, what is your point of view on robotics right now? Are you gung ho and full speed ahead? Is it taking some small steps in key industries? Maybe what's your perspective and Intel's as a larger picture when it comes to the robots in our channel?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And there's several things that Intel's doing in the robotic space, and I focus on selling compute and sort of technology into robotics end customers. So OEMs, whether it's something on the server side that has to do with the robotics workload, imaging or doing some inference on an edge server or even in the cloud, to all the way down to what's the compute that's running the robot, that's doing the sensor fusion or doing the controls actually in the robot. And so, there's that, but then there's also Intel has Intel RealSense, right? Which is the, camera, vision, depth cameras, and being able to bring in vision as a workload into the robot. So the robot can do object detection or obstacle avoidance and things of that nature. That's, something else that's happening at Intel. And then there's research that's happening around AI, sort of an adjacency to robotics. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening. From my perspective, I look at, how does the compute in various verticals, right? We look at robotics as a horizontal technology that cuts across various verticals. And so, some of those verticals might be retail, manufacturing, of course, supply chain. All of those things have this area where robotics can be used, and that's maybe material handling, pick and place, in retail. Material handling might be on the manufacturing side or on the retail back of house side. So there's lots of areas I think that robotics falls into, and those are the places that we're really exploring. And so it's not just a sort of a broad focus. It's really sort of these different verticals that allow you to do sort of these use cases, and in particular, those areas are autonomous mobile robots, cobots, and industrial robots. So all the things that sort of surround those areas.
Right. Yeah, when you think about it, I mean, robots, as they start coming into the marketplace, are to a certain degree task oriented, right? Like, move materials from point A to point B, those types of things. And what I like about Intel's approach to that, and what Milt just said, what I heard is, getting involved in the OEMs and getting the Intel message into those. And it's important because some of the things that we've referenced in the past, like when you're an OEM or even a software developer that's maybe building on top of it, you want to have, some security or some faith, I guess is the right word, of the componentry that's going into it, that it's solid, that it meets security measures and stuff like that. And so it's a welcome thing to have, Intel kind of start getting involved, at least from our perspective, from BlueStar's perspective, in some of the things that we're doing. So that's part of the game, right, Milt? Now you don't really care the OEM. You want to talk to all these robot manufacturers, right? And try to get Intel inside, to coin a phrase.
Yeah, we want you to have a preference for running your workloads on our platforms, right? I mean, that's but the other thing is you touched on is the use cases, right? The use cases are there's lots of things within those use cases that you want to have a platform for that's a secure platform, right? Mm-hmm. So you think of all of the things that the hardware enables, like security, manageability, performance, things of these nature. You have to bubble those up into the actual use case, right? And so a lot of times end customers might not, necessarily care about the bits and bytes in the compute, but they want that stability. They want security. They want those things that help enable those use cases. So those are things that I think about when talking to an end customer. Like, what's the benefit of your platform? Well, there's the security elements, the manageability, all those things that the platform enables, and we bubble that up to how it benefits the use case.
I think a platform, I'm glad you brought that up, is key in this development. When we start getting it in the hands of the solution integrators that are then implementing these solutions to end users, having a robust, solid platform that you can build off of, we are finding is key, and Intel's there. They have that capability. So good stuff there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Milt, many of our VARs that we work with are you mentioned some of the industries out there. A lot of our folks are into retail, hospitality, supply chain, manufacturing. You mentioned. So that, I think there's a lot of industries they already work in where the opportunities are there. But let's say for somebody, maybe a VAR that is open to and receptive to the idea of incorporating robotics into their tech stack, their go-to-market strategy in the near future. Are there any applications in those industries that you really think stand out as kind of like the low-hanging fruit, the opportunities that are going to be on the near horizon, where if they're ready to go and they're ready to get into this, could be great places to start? Where do you see that opportunity right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You talked about several segments. I mean, manufacturing is, well, maybe stepping back, some of the challenges that these verticals are having, right? These segments are having. There are lots of challenges around labor. There are lots of challenges around, getting the right people to do certain types of jobs. That's been a big focus of where robotics is key in some of these business segments. So think about retail or hospitality. Let's look at hospitality or even healthcare, right? Being able to offload the already challenged or challenged staff with a robot that can take care of a particular line of work. For example, cleaning the floor, right? That's a huge use case in retail, hospitality, and in healthcare, where just basic cleaning might be the first thing that gets cut in certain areas when you have labor challenges, right? You don't want nurses focusing on non-nursing kind of jobs, or obviously doctors not focusing on clinician kinds of workloads, right? So being able to offload some of these things to a robot is key in manufacturing. Bringing material from one place to the other is the work of a robot, right? And not having your workers just bringing things back and forth. It's sort of a low impact job, and it's something that robots do really well, right? And so even in retail, right, being able to go down the aisles and make sure that you don't have any stock outs, you don't have any any issues with people accessing particular products, right? So those are things that robots do really, really well. Sometimes people don't do them so well. So those are really good areas where robots are able to do it. And one of the other things I think is really good, especially from a VAR or integrator perspective, is having a job that once you commission that robot to do its job, that there's not a huge amount of interaction with that robot. The robot, you tell the robot what to do, it goes off and does its job,
right?
And sort of you get the analytics of what it's done, or you get the feedback of what it's done. You don't have to. There's not so much management that you need a whole human just to watch the robot, right? You want it to be able to go do its thing. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, everything. I agree with everything that Milt said. And I'll throw on the table a couple of other applications now that we continue to develop this relationship with Intel and broaden the scope. Such things as like healthcare. But believe it or not, healthcare is one of those verticals. Everything that Milt just said, you got labor shortage issues, or you've got highly skilled people that you don't want doing the things like cleaning, cleaning the floors, cleaning the bathrooms, toting around carts of laundry and things of this nature. And so we're starting to see a lot of interest and capabilities of implementing robotic solutions to enable some of that stuff. So, if I sat back and thought about it as a reseller, what are some of the opportunities or what's standing out? Some of those things is it, dipping a toe into some of these cleaning or some things of that nature. We are starting to see it on the retail side, whether it's bringing products to table side. I'm sorry, now I'm in hospitality. Right. Products to hospitality.
It could be inventory management in retail.
Exactly, inventory management in retail. So I think there are some opportunities that are bubbling up, to use Milt's phrase there, that these opportunities really are starting to crystallize and become a reality, primarily because of some of the things we're seeing on the labor shortage and things of that nature. Their business still needs to go on, and the robots can help out with these tasks to enable it.
And I think that's a great way, if you're a VAR, to think about, like, all right, where might this opportunity exist for me? Where have I had these conversations? Because I guarantee if you've been out there with enough customers, you've heard there's some of their pain points. You've heard them talk about labor shortages. You've heard them say, like, hey, I don't have the people to engage in these. I'm not going to call them menial tasks, because even the
sometimes they are inventory counting. Who likes to do inventory counting?
Yeah, the stuff that no one loves to do, but still has to be done as part of a functional business.
That's right.
You've had those conversations. You've heard those pain points. Maybe you've already been looking at how to address some of those pain points with some automation or something. But those are also places where the robotics conversation would be a natural fit too. Like, hey, you know what? I remember coming in here and you talked all about how much trouble it was just to get product, from the back room to the shelves on a regular basis, or without someone carting back and forth and not being on the floor when there's customers out there. Let's talk about, robotics. Let's talk about the potential for that. And again, I know a lot of this, I think we'll talk about this a little bit more, but I know a lot of these conversations are not ones where someone is going to right now say, yes, here's my check, I'm ready to buy a fleet of robots for my stores or my facility or whatever. But I think this is the time to start having those conversations.
For sure.
This time to start thinking about where robotics might fit and start talking to people about, have you ever thought about this? Have you seen something like this? Let me show you this video of this cool new robot that I just heard about. Do you think that'd be something fun to have in your location? So I think this is a good time to start having those conversations right now.
Yeah.
Let's flip that a little bit though, Milt. Let's talk about the other side of things, which is, and I'm sure there's probably a few more of these folks than the ones that are open to the opportunities right now, which is the folks that are saying like, I don't know about this, they're concerned from the end users, and for that matter, VARs, integrators themselves, that are just like, they get it.
Right.
They understand what robots can do, but they're not quite ready to get in on the investment side of this yet. They're not quite sure that this is what they want to do. What kind of concerns do you hear about? What kind of pushback do you get? And how do you address those concerns when people bring them up?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's several concerns that I've heard, and it sort of depends on where the robots are, right, and what the interaction with the robots are. I think like any solution that you deploy with a customer or into the environment that you're working on, is making sure that the people in that environment are bought in, right? Like it's going to be tough to implement a robot in a place where the people that the robot are working with, or the connections that are around the robot, don't want the robot there, don't understand how to use the robot, or don't support that, right? And that's a challenge. So when you're putting in a solution in that space, understanding how do you get the rest of that surrounding ecosystem involved in the robot, right? I've seen places where back of house sometimes is easier to implement a robot than front of house, right? I've seen areas in retail where the customers don't like the robot, right? And so there's been challenges in that space. But I think any of these areas that are dull, dirty, and dangerous, and that's sort of the term in the robotic space where robots are winning, so to say. This implementation space is open for bringing in solutions. The way you asked about how do you counter some of those discussions or maybe some of those challenges, again, it's about bringing that, getting people's buy-in, getting people involved. There are times when what you thought the robot was going to be doing as an integrator, bringing a solution into a space, isn't really what was wanted. And so understanding who's using the robot and how they're using it is really key. So having those conversations. I think there's several kinds of discussions you can have when it comes to pushback, but understanding what your customer's trying to get done, your end customer's trying to get done, I think those help chart the path into positive conversations around robots. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. For sure. And, going back to the end user, I think that, when you have that conversation, and some of the conversations that I have been involved in, now that we're getting more and more involved in this, is having that ROI conversation, because, nothing speaks, I need this, more than the ROI around the money as it relates to it. So when you can have a conversation around, look, we know you're having a hard time finding labor. By the way, this robotics or whatever, this solution can help mitigate that by whatever, a robot can replace, one human or two human tasks that are happening. And so just being able to get a little bit knowledgeable about that and start having that conversation and bring the money on the table about what it's going to save over the short term or even the long term, because a lot of this is starting to get sophisticated with robotics as a service, right? So what you're talking about, what are the tasks that need to be done? We will implement a robotic solution to get that done, right? Type of a thing. I mean, that's when BlueStar, when we implemented our automation in our warehouse, right? That's goods to human. It's a robotics as a service where they are guaranteeing a certain amount of throughput. So I mean, this is the speak, and so it's very much I wouldn't shy away from the financial aspect of what robots can bring to the table and how they can make it very efficient, and from not just a labor perspective or a workflow, perspective, but also on the financial side. And then for the resellers, because Milt, I know you're starting to work more and more with them. We run into them, right? They're just anxious about robotics. They see it on the horizon. They see the videos where a robot's running, whether it's in retail, doing the inventory count, but they just don't understand.
Feels like a leap further ahead that they're prepared for.
Yes, and they don't understand, so they're anxious about how do I get involved. Well, here's the good news: there is a path. And so we are starting to develop with Intel and others, a path to enable solution integrators to have a robotic story. So Nexus AMR is one of those, and Milt, I know you were going to bring them up too. This is one of those companies that's been in the robotics industry for decades, and we're trying to help leverage the experience and the knowledge of how to implement these robotic solutions by using somebody who's been doing it for a very, very long time.
Right.
And so once you have a conversation and understand what the go-to-market strategy is and how you build out a robotics practice, I get very energized about it, because I don't know why. There's lots of resellers out there that could easily implement this into their day-to-day activity and start having a different conversation with their end users, unlike the ones that they're having today, and be able to execute on that. Right, Milt?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think what Nexus AMR is doing, I think is really turning the corner in a lot of ways with respect to showing what you can do with robotics. There's this they're building an experience center, right? And it's, I think being able to see what can be done in your environment with a robot is better than kind of going to a website and seeing what the robot can do, period, right? It's like the difference between a robotics company doing a POC and showing that the POC can be done, but what happens when you try to scale it, right? And so that's, to me, that's the difference. I think all this work that is being done with BlueStar and Nexus AMR, I think is really going to help turn the corner. One of the concepts that I think about when I think about robotics is this idea of emergence, right? Like it's certain things don't bubble up. I keep using that term, bubble up, but certain things don't come to to fruition until there's enough critical mass for that to happen. So there's a lot of things that are sort of emergent properties with robotics, like this idea of, if you have multiple types of robots in an ecosystem, how do you control them? How do you make sure that they're not they're aware of each other and they're doing the right things, and you don't have 5 or 6 different control methods of these different robots? How do you that hasn't happened before, because you haven't had multiple types of robots in an ecosystem. It's an emergent property. And so I think as customers start looking at how can they use robots, this idea of emergence really is, great, we've got this one robot that can do this thing, right? And we're getting some efficiency from that, cleaning the floors or what have you. And then we've got this other robot that can deliver things from the first floor to the 5th floor, and we can offload all this stuff, right? And so you start to get these benefits of having all these things come together, and the efficiencies of it come together. And that's sort of how I look at, is one way to look at this emergent property.
And it's coming into our world, right? Yeah. I mean, we understand that we see robots that have RFID readers that go up and down aisles and do the counts for them. We utilize at our own place robotics in a warehousing type of solution that is, scanning items, doing barcode scanning and things of that nature. So a lot of the resellers that are in our ecosystem, they see it. They see that there is some automation coming. To Milt's point, we can help pave that for them and show them the path to make it happen. When we talk about Nexus AMR, this company that we're partnering with, they have the ability to do multiple types of robots all under one dashboard, all under one control. You got a floor sweeper, great. You got something that's doing the inventory count, no problem. It's all integrated, and that is the path forward. That's the path forward that successful solution integrators are going to have.
I'll add one extra little pushback too that I think it's important to address, which is there's still this perception that robots, in fact, a lot of technology that's in the in a marketplace or in a, especially like retail hospitality where it's customer facing in some way, is the idea that you're trying to replace people.
Oh, right.
You're trying to make it so that you don't have to hire so many people and pay people salaries. It's all about taking people's jobs away. And I'll give you an example of this, and this is not even robotics related, but we recently did a survey of groceries, grocery executives about technology and in particular like self-service and kiosks and whatnot or whatever. And we're out there promoting it, so people would read it and learn about what these folks had to say. There are so many random comments that we get on that that marketing push of people going like, well, I don't use self-service because it's taking somebody's job.
Oh, wow.
Or I'm not going to use this. All you're trying to do is keep your wages down and take people's jobs away.
Oh, geez.
And
yeah, right.
It's fascinating to me. There's still such a touchiness about stuff like that. And I guarantee you that's going to be something when the first time people go to a store and they see a robot roaming up and down the aisles, collecting groceries or cleaning up or something, or they're in the doctor's office or in a hospital and they see a robot, gathering up laundry. The first thing people are going to be like, oh, you stole someone's job by putting that thing in here.
Right.
And I think it'll be important to be able to have those conversations. Maybe if you're a reseller and talking to your customers about like, hey, here's how you can address that. Here's how you need to be talking about that and thinking about that, and maybe helping your customers think about how they're going to put their own messages out there about that robots are more of an augmentation and helping out where you are having labor challenges.
This service wouldn't exist unless because we can't find the people to do it.
Exactly. Like, it's not that I don't want to hire somebody to do this. It's that I literally can't, and I found a way to do it. And now all my other people that I am hiring in, the headcount I'm still retaining, I can put them to work in other ways and better use cases. So I think that's an important one to address there. Well, Milt, then let's talk about recurring revenue, because that's a big thing for us on the podcast. We're always talking about it. I think at this point, it's become pretty important to a lot of the resellers that we work with, their business models, whether it is, selling, media ongoing, whether it's service plans, something that's generating some money beyond the initial, like, hey, I sold you a gadget and I'll see you in 4 years, ways that they can continue to make money. So robotics, obviously, can be a pretty big, potent upfront investment potentially for an end user. So for a VAR that maybe wants to get into this, how can they think? What are some ways that they're going to be able to find some recurring revenue, some incremental revenue if they're out there selling robots to somebody? Is it? I'm sure it's more than just all right, here's your devices, bye bye kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, and that's the challenge, right? I mean, different companies can support different sort of robot ecosystems or rollouts. There's some big manufacturing companies that might say, hey, we're going to buy several of these industrial robots to use for, packaging, pallet creation and things of depalletizing, things of that nature. And they'll use them over several years and that works for them. But there's a lot of end customers that would take a robot if it was charged by use, right? Or charged, some kind of monthly or some kind of recurring fee. And that sort of falls in that robots as a service space, right? We've seen X as a service in a lot of different ways, right? Data center, infrastructure as a service. But this model that's developing in the robotic space, robotics as a service, is also something that I think end customers and many VARs would be interested in deploying to their end customers. And so you'll see like folks like Nexus AMR providing these robots as a service and not making the end customer have the big investment of the actual robot hardware, getting the infrastructure going. There are lots of other big US-based robotics companies that are using that same model. And if you go out and search on robots as a service, you'll see lots of folks developing that type of business model. So I think that's certainly a future trend. I expect that to continue to grow, where you've got a company, an integrator, or even a robotics OEM, where they're providing that robot as a service. Matter of fact, my startup between Intel and Intel, my startup was in that same space, robotics as a service in the retail inventory space. And so I expect that to continue to grow, and I would expect end customers to be open towards supporting that.
What's the phrase where there's mystery, there's margin? And when you think about it, there's a lot of mystery around robotics right now. Right. But there's early stage opportunities as well. So, you phrase it, there are some robotics that would be a large upfront investment, but I'm telling you, even that's starting to come down. Right. I mean, the scale of some of these robots and what's going to be happening in the marketplace, I don't know that that's going to be the real issue, but having a recurring revenue type of business model is key, right? I mean, you want to, I would think, want to get into the robotics as a service type of a model. That way, you don't, even you as a reseller don't have to worry so much about, the advancements that are going to happen in robotics. And by the way, they're going to happen. They're going to happen very quickly. You can continue to offer, the solution that you have is utilizing the latest and greatest type of solution. So it's critical to understand that and to get that right kind of coming out of the gate and drive that incremental revenue that's going to be there for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
And
we're all
at a
about
nice margin, by the way.
Very nice.
I would say yes.
I'm assuming yes.
More than they're used to getting on any other hardware. I can tell you that right now.
There you go. All right. Well, hey, if we haven't sold you enough on robots just yet, in a moment, Milt will tell us a little bit more about why you might find robotics to be useful for your business.
There you go.
If it's the right fit for you
Yes.
and where you're headed next.
Yep.
But before we do that, as always, we like to thank our sponsors here on the TEConnect podcast. Obviously, a big shout out to Intel for lending us Milt to chat with today and for supporting our TEConnect program, supporting the podcast. We appreciate everything that you guys do for us and our position in the channel right now. Hey, if you like this show, if you like this conversation, a couple things you should be doing. I mean, I ask every episode, and I'd just like to see a little more often where somebody hits the like button on YouTube.
Yes. Yeah.
Subscribes to our channel.
Smash the subscribe.
Subscribes to our podcast feed. Maybe do both. If let's say you're someone that only likes to watch the video version.
Yep.
Fine. I don't know why you've got to look at these mugs every day, but let's say you do. If that's your thing, fine. Like and subscribe, but then hey, go over to your podcast platform. Whether you even listen to audio podcasts or not, I promise you got an iPhone or a Google phone or something. You've probably got a podcast platform or an app on there. Just go in and just hit subscribe to our podcast. Just add a little more subscription there. That stuff helps get the word out and get more people to see.
That's right. Yep.
Become interested in the show. So please do that. Also share the show if you think this conversation was great. And you're like, man, I'd like other people need to be talking about this. Why are we discussing this more? I've got someone else in my company who needs to hear about this. Share this episode with them. Let them hear about it too. And by all means, tell us what you want to hear about on the show.
Yeah.
Was there something that Milt said today? You're like, I want a little bit of a deeper dive in that. Fine. We'll try to drag Milt back on. I'm sure he's a busy guy, but he'll make time for us. We'll bring him back on. Maybe ask some more questions. Maybe find someone from Nexus or something we can bring on and chat with too. But you got to tell us. We need to know what you want to hear about. What kind of conversations, what kind of topics, what industries, what types of products do you want to hear more about? Get us that information. There's always a link in the show notes where you can send us ideas. You can also email us. You can hit us up on social media. But guess what? If you do, you get a free t-shirt.
There it is, free t-shirt.
That's it.
Bingo.
Just for sending us an idea.
Yep.
Even if we don't use it, just for taking the time and the effort to type up a little something and tell us what you want to hear about on the show, we will send you a free TEConnect podcast
we owe
t-shirt.
Milt a t-shirt. We should send one to
Sure,
Milt.
yeah, why not?
There you go.
We're going to start giving them out to all of our guests.
Oh, wait.
We should, honestly. We very much should.
We should.
But yes, we'll get you a shirt out. But yes, please send those IDs in. We'd love to send out some of those shirts. They are fantastic new shirts. They feel good. We're excited to get those out there, but you need to tell us what you want to hear about on the show. Of course, as always, you can find us online or reach out to us anytime on BlueStar's Facebook page, our LinkedIn page, or email us directly, TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, let's wrap things up as always, starting with our VAR value. I mentioned this earlier, Milt, that again, entering this robotics market, it might not be right for every VAR. We understand that. This is a different kind of play than potentially anything else they may have been doing for the last decade or two.
Sure.
This could be something different.
Discipline.
So when you think about that, what are some recommendations? What are some checkpoints? What are things they should be considering to determine if robotics is the right fit for their tech stack, for their go-to-market strategy, and for that matter, if they do decide to move forward, how's Intel going to help them get there?
Yeah, no, they're great questions. I think, I've been bouncing around this idea, and this is not a new idea, but this idea of this chief robotics officer, right? And what does a chief robotics officer do, and what does that mean? And in particular for resellers, for VARs, what does that mean? And what I've concluded is that a robotics champion in a robotics company is needed, right? In a lot of ways, right? You can't. It's not a product where you can say, oh, get these products on the shelf, and if customers want them, we'll sell them these products.
That's fair.
Robotics is, it's I think it's a little more involved in having that champion that understands sort of the robotics ecosystem or wants to understand that robotics ecosystem is a key in enabling that robotics solution or use case, or use cases to your customers, being tied into sort of that ecosystem and the that community that's driving solutions is going to make them successful, right? Like they may say, hey, well, as a VAR, we want to provide a cleaning robot. Well, there are several cleaning robots out there that you could provide as a robots as a service business model, but how do those, what's the difference? Why would one customer want this particular one versus another? So somebody's got to understand that. And I think that's the job of that, whether it's a CRO or it's your robotics champion or, whoever it is that's, that's making those decisions for that VAR understands that playing field. So that's one of the things that I would think to, figure out if it's right for that VAR. If they don't have the appetite to do it, then it might not be as successful as they want.
I agree with that. If you're a company that likes to innovate, you probably do have the inclination to have somebody like Milt saying that would be in charge of that. I think that's brilliant, Milt. You do have to have buy-in for the solution integrator. It's going to take resources. It's going to take knowledge. You need somebody who's going to buy into that. And if you do have that person, then I'll throw on the table, you got to have the right partners. And
right.
And I think that a person that is knowledgeable about robotics, that can start working the partner ecosystem, because that's what it's going to take, right? It takes hardware, it takes software, it takes programming in order to make these things happen. You got to fill in your gaps along the way as you develop your business around it. You got to have the right partner ecosystem in there too. So good stuff.
I wholeheartedly agree. And again, I think having that champion aspect and idea, because
the CRO,
this
but
is
robotics.
right. This is a different kind of play than, it's not the same as like going to your sales reps and saying like, all right, here's a new type of barcode scanner.
Right. Yeah.
Here's a new type of printer that's on the market. Here's the specs and what makes it a little different. Maybe there's something slightly new and innovative that makes it unique compared to something else. That's easy for most salespeople to wrap their heads around and go out and start selling it. It's a little bit of a different type of play here. This is a whole different style of product, a whole different type of sales cycle and discussion that you're going to have if you're trying to sell a robot. It's not as simple as like, all right, hey boys, girls, tech. We've decided that robotics is on the tech stack now.
Yeah, right.
Here's some spec sheets. Good luck. Go out and sell. So I think having
open up your Rolodex and go at them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Having that champion, having that person who's taking the lead and maybe can help train those sales folks or be the person that comes along with them on those calls to have those conversations. That's handy. I like that idea.
I would add one more thing, and I would echo what you said about partnerships, right? I mean, partners are really key in this space, and that champion is going to realize that. They're going to go out and they're going to make the right partnerships to drive the business. And someone like Nexus AMR, I think that folks, they're pulling these types of things together, and like partners with Nexus AMR would benefit from all of the things that they've learned, that they've understood about robotics and what they're trying to drive. And I think it's so under, it's undervalued, and I think something that we don't talk enough about is the partnerships piece. I just wanted to echo that. I think that's a perfect example.
Yeah,
there you go.
Good stuff.
All right.
Yep.
Well, let's wrap up as always with our favorite segment, What's TEConnecting with You, where we get to talk about something in the world of tech, innovation, science.
We don't have to talk about robots, but we could.
Well, yeah, because that has been one we've talked about quite a few times on the show. So what's TEConnecting with You right now, Milt?
Oh, the James Webb telescope.
Oh yeah. Nice.
So I'm a big fan of astrophotography. You probably see the little telescope.
Oh, I do see it. Yeah.
And there was a bigger there's a bigger telescope mount over here next to me. But it's great. The images that are coming off of the James Webb are just amazing. I think the things that we're learning about space in general are really amazing stuff. So That's
Man,
what's TEConnecting.
It is amazing. And then to visualize it, you can talk about like whatever, the Horsehead Nebula that's however many hundreds of millions of light years away. And then you see it in high resolution. It's like, oh, dang, that's cool.
I think sometimes it's easy to forget just how amazingly massive the universe is and how much stuff is out there that we can't even, that would blow your mind to think about.
That's right.
And I feel like every time a new batch of images comes in from the telescope, I'm always like, oh, wow, like look at this stuff. Like I can't believe this is out there. I can't believe this exists. This is
how far away is that again?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's the beginning of the universe. We'll say what?
There. Tangentially to this, if you're someone who's on TikTok, I recommend an account. Her name is Astro Alexandra, I think is her handle on there.
All right.
This woman, like, she loves to explore interesting stuff about space and and space exploration. But she's that person, like, whenever there's a new batch of of photos that will come out, I'm like, all right, I gotta go see what Astro Alexandra has to say about this, because she's always got the cool inside scoop and great way of explaining this stuff and explaining what you're like. And you can just tell, like, it's one of those things where, like, every time she records one, you can tell that she just loves it. Like, she just is passionate about it, excited about it, and just wants to keep talking more about this stuff. So there you go.
Cool.
JWST, highly recommend checking out any of that stuff. I'm pretty sure it's come up on the show like 5 or 6 times now.
Oh, love it.
For good reason.
Yeah, love that.
All right, Dean, what's TEConnecting with you?
Well, here's, I feel like it's part of my job to give you an update time to time on how close we are getting to the T101 Terminator model.
Speaking of robotics,
speaking of robotics from the Terminator movies.
Right.
Well, we're getting pretty dang close, if you ask me. So Japanese researchers have made a robot with human tissue. Okay, so Japanese scientists have found a way to attach living skin to robotic faces for more realistic smiles and other facial expressions, because we want the robots that are going to take over the world to actually have smiles.
That's true. I suppose
we want to have,
they look pleasant, we might be a little more receptive. Yeah.
The breakthrough came from copying tissue structures in people, according to the Tokyo University. This prototype, what's hard about it is that the skin, believe it or not, it's really hard to like mimic how it works. And so they tried to attach some hooks to it, and then the hooks would pull on the skin and it doesn't really look right. And so it's really kind of fascinating when you get subdermal, I guess, and under your skin. I don't want to go there, but anyway, they have figured some of that out, and they now have of course, lab-made human living cells attached to robotics.
They aren't skinning somebody.
It's or it's not Hannibal Lecter or anything like that.
Okay, that's good.
That they're employing to do that. Boy, that's a bad path. Let's not go down there. But they are. So I guess we're getting a little closer. All right. I don't know that it looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger yet, but they're
I always feel like Arnold was a great choice for the T100 to start off. Or was it T800? Was that
I thought it was the T101, but I could be wrong.
I think the 800s were the
800s. There it is. Yes.
Because the guy kind of looks a little inhuman sometimes. At least back then, when he was like so buff and like ridiculously muscled. He was the kind of person you're like, well, he looks like he could be a robot exoskeleton underneath there. I get it. Yeah. So. And
then the T1000 comes out that can morph and all that.
Yeah.
Was that one of your favorite movies growing up, Milt? I mean, with the robots in it and stuff like that, or what?
I'm a big sci-fi guy, so anything that's sci-fi is good for me. Robots, that's a bonus.
Right. Well, hopefully we're trending more towards Short Circuit instead of Terminator, right? I want Johnny 5, exactly. Yeah. That's a robot I can get behind. I don't mind that. I don't worry about him taking over the world so much.
No doubt. All right, what's TEConnecting with you?
All right, so speaking of space, we're talking about progressively talking about getting to putting colonies out on the moon. I think that's going to happen probably in our lifetimes. That we're actually going to start building some kind of colony on the moon and potentially even get into Mars and start doing it there as well. Well, one of the big complexities of that is, how do you build stuff out there?
This is true.
Because it's going to be pretty expensive and very difficult to just take a whole bunch of lumber and steel from Earth and ship it off somewhere. Can you imagine how much that bill is going to cost? I mean, so scientists have been exploring the idea of actually building bricks and models, and building stuff from the materials that are actually on the moon. They call it what's it called? I just was reading it here and I lost it. Regolith or
The material that's on the moon itself.
It's here.
the moon
Yeah,
surface?
regolith. That's what they call it. The dust, rock, fine
Yes.
particulate that's on the moon surface. They call it regolith. Mm-hmm. So basically, they're like, all right, we know we're going to probably try to start building from that material and using that to create the structures and stuff we need. But how's that actually going to work? Well, some scientists decided to do a little experimenting, and basically, the model they decided to use is Legos.
Okay.
Figure like, hey, well, what if we use that particulate, that type of matter,
to make
and
Legos.
essentially built Lego blocks that function the same way, that had the little, tabs on the top that locked in when you put them all together, and use that. And if we can make, whole batches of those, and then use that to go up and build our structures, we could ship them all, a little more
Sounds
easily.
about right.
Or again, make them from the material that's already available.
Yes.
So they've been doing some experiments. Now, first of all, your first question may be, well, how do they get enough moon stuff to do that? Well, great question, because we don't have that much moon samples to go out and start
dust off the suit or something like that.
To go out and start mixing things up. So instead, they found a meteorite that I think had been found somewhere in northern Africa back in 2000. It's like a 4.5 million year old meteorite. And they went and pulled dust out of it and used that to start building this out as a concept of how these Legos would work together. And apparently, so far, they use a 3D printer, obviously, to put them together.
That's where I like the 3D printing.
It's got the design.
thing.
It's got the clickable studs. Everything's exactly the way it should be. And so the thinking there is, hey, this could be the way to do it. Still in the initial stages of figuring out if this is actually how they're going to be able to do this. Right. But it's a good proof of concept at this point.
Well, as long as it's airtight. Because that's kind of important, right?
Yes.
You're going to build something on the moon and not walk around in a moon suit the whole time.
Yes,
it's got to be kind of airtight, not porous.
Right,
we need it to not be porous.
Now, if you're interested in seeing these, apparently Lego stores around the country, they're sending them around. It's like a traveling tour that runs through September 20th.
Nice.
At various Lego stores in looks like Florida, Chicago, California, New York. So if you happen to be by a Lego store, stop in. You might be able to
Milt's
see.
son already missed out on this. You could have been building your stuff out of moon rocks there, Milt.
Get to go see these prototypes. Yeah, good stuff.
Good stuff, yeah.
All right, that is what's TEConnecting with us. Milt Walker with Intel. Thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciated having you on the show.
Yep.
It is time for us to unplug. Until next time, go explore some robots. Go do like Milt did. Just go out somewhere and buy your own robot, take it apart, put it back together, see what you can.
I love it.
See what you can do with it.
I love it. Yep.
Think about how you're going to live on the moon. Watch out for robots with human tissue on their faces.
Smiling
I guess.
at you, yes.
And seriously, check out Astro Alexandra. Check out JWST Photos if you haven't lately. It's a way to expand your get away from this planet for a little while and explore where the rest of the universe can offer.
All good.
And as always, folks, please stay connected. This episode of the TEConnect podcast was brought to you by Intel. All right, the average point of sale system, it stays out there in the field for at least 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, I know. Crazy, huh? Think of all the advancements in technology that happen.
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, you might not think that's long, but in the tech world, that's long.
Long.
Well, that means that the investments in your retail customers are making today will impact the effectiveness of their customer engagement for years to come. Now, with workloads that are powered by AI that are coming into the sector fast, investing in Intel Core-enabled infrastructure and powered by the Toshiba TCX 900 is not just a sound investment for today, it's an insurance policy on what is coming tomorrow. I mean, if you're going to put something out there that's going to be someone's going to be sitting on for that long, at least make sure that it's still useful and functional.
Right? You would think
7 years
for
down
sure.
the road.
For sure.
So the TCX 900 POS system offers the best-in-class modular solution that drives smarter retail transactions. Its powerful yet sleek design boasts one of the smallest footprints on the market today, giving retailers a modular, compact, and efficient solution for their stores. The TCX 900 is the next gen of POS experiences. It features a 13th generation Intel Core processor, the first DDR5 memory module. I don't know what that means, but it sounds pretty cool.
Yes.
An integrated Wi-Fi 6E antenna and optional Bluetooth support, and finally a rich scent. No, it's got a rich scent. Yeah, it's a little piquant, a little smoky. No, it's a rich set of integrated I/O ports for nearly any configuration. Check out the link in the show notes or contact your BlueStar representative to learn more. The TEConnect podcast is brought to you by Elo and their new Quick Ship program, which is expediting deliveries of select Intel-based, all-in-one touchscreen computers.
Nice. Quick Ship.
Now we're talking about quick shipping some Intel products and Intel-powered products for you. All right, the Quick Ship initiative, it promises readily available inventory of Elo POS and iSeries 2 models with various processors, memory, and storage options. Additionally, they include Celeron models in the program at reduced prices. Elo will ship applicable SKUs to BlueStar within 10 business days. Check out the link in the show notes for a list of eligible products. Quick Ship program is limited in North America and Latin America at quantities of 20 units or less. Contact the BlueStar Elo team with any questions.